The UK government is forcing a mandatory digital ID on its population and they're pretending it's for safety.
This is the start of a social credit system. It's wrong and everybody should say no.
All of this is the World Economic Plan for Agenda 2030.
Problems had to be fomented to make people desperate to accept this as a solution.
The ID was the key that unlocked total control.
The UK government is forcing a mandatory digital ID on its population and they're pretending it's for safety. I'm about to expose them. And before I continue, I'd like to make something very clear. This is not a left versus a right issue. This is a government versus the people issue. That's a very important distinction to make. So with that said, the brick card, an idea initially proposed by Tony Blair, now being carried out by Keir Starmer, is effectively an all-encompassing digital ID. It will initially only store your passport, national insurance number, and other basic information. But what this really is the framework for full totalitarian control. And here are the two huge negatives that you need to be aware of. The first is that having all of your information stored in one centralized database makes you significantly more susceptible to life-changing data breaches and hacks. After all, this new announcement is a hacker's dream. Imagine waking up today as a hacker, and rather than having to obtain physical copies of identification, keys, passwords, back-end loopholes, and coding to find every detail about someone, it's now all going to be located in the same place. And for those who still don't understand, I'll make it clearer. It's like Voldemort voluntarily carrying around his Horcruxes with him and saying, "Come and get me, everything's in one place now." It defeats the purpose. The second and worst huge negative is that as it stands, the government already has access to all of the IDs they're claiming are going to be mandatory on the brick card. So the question must be asked, why is it necessary in the first place?
It's happening, bro. We're fucked.
Yeah, this is bad.
Keir Starmer wants to have you believe that it will magically end illegal immigration overnight. This is a lie. What it really is a gateway legislation to securing more of your data in the future. After they've got your personal and medical data in one place, it won't be long before they start demanding your financial data as well. They'll demand your bank details and credit card information all be added to the same ID, from which they'll be able to dictate everything you do, what you spend your money on, where you travel to, who you see, what content you watch. The list is endless as long as they have control over your spending. And this will all become progressively worse with the introduction of the Bitcoin, the proposed digital currency. And then to completely round off Keir Starmer's totalitarian objective, a social credit system similar to that which they already have in China will follow. Accidentally travel 1 mile over the speed limit, the government will pull the money directly from your bank account immediately, no appeal possible. Say something the government doesn't like online, banned from social media for 3 months. Full control. So this is the point I want to be really clear about. Some will call this fear-mongering, and others will say just because it hasn't been proposed, it's definitely not going to happen. These people, unfortunately, have small and narrow minds. You need to begin thinking about the future and not just what's coming in the next few months. As I said before, if the government already have access to all of your personal data that they're requesting to begin with, what do they really need the brick card for? Your life will never be better by giving the government more control over it. And so this really will be a test of whether the left and the right can work together for a joint cause. Because this is the first time in a long time that a change is coming that benefits no one. If there was ever a time to find common ground, it's now. And I'd like to think that after doing so, we can all realize that there is so much more that connects us than divides us.
The problem with digital ID, and I read this article by Pat McFadden today, who's Tony Blair's mouthpiece, because Tony Blair wants this because he's going to make zillions from it, by the way. It's the only thing he talks about. There is only one line in this whole article which for me is absolutely critical, and that is that it's going to be so easy to do all of the things that you've just said. You can even collect your supermarket loyalty points on it. That is the scariest line in that whole article. You know why? Because eventually, Kai, when we have this whole thing where you can't do anything in society without your digital ID, not only will you be able to collect your supermarket points on it, which sounds all lovely, when you've eaten too much beef because you've overstepped your carbon footprint, it won't let you buy it at the tills. When you go to fill up your car, it won't let you put petrol in. And when you haven't been a nice person online, it won't let you get on an airplane. This is the start of a social credit system. It's wrong, and everybody should say no, and I will say no. We have a passport. They know who I am. That's enough.
China have a thing called the social credit system. Now let me explain how this works. So the social credit system in China is linked to the digital ID. Everything is linked in one database, and they can reward or punish good or bad behaviour. I'll give you an example of how this works. Because everything is linked, this is a real case study. A man in China hadn't paid some money towards a divorce settlement that he owed, okay, and this was flagged on his social credit score, okay, his social credit system. He then went to buy a ticket on one of their super fast trains to go and see some family. He was denied the purchase of the ticket until he settled the divorce settlement. So because he had an outstanding fine, he couldn't travel. Other examples of this include people who have been flagged on their system experiencing higher mortgage rates, more difficulty getting a loan, higher value purchases have been put out of reach, all sorts of flags, all linked to this one system. So let's relate this back to the UK. Let's say you've got a parking fine, you haven't paid a parking fine, you go and try and, I don't know, get a train to London. You might not be able to get that train to London until you settle the parking fine. That's the sort of system that China are running, and that is exactly what this government is heading for. I'm telling you now, that is what they want. So be aware, look up China's social credit system, and remember this. China's social credit system did not start with scores, it started with digital IDs. Once everyone's identity was linked to everything they do, banking, travel, even social media, the systems could reward or punish behaviour instantly. The ID was the key that unlocked total control.
A good score brings benefits, but people with low scores lose rights. The cinema names and shames people considered untrustworthy, plastering their details, even their addresses, across big screens.
It's a matter of principle. Those people have to be condemned.
Those people aren't honest, so they have to pay the price.
It's only right to pay your debts. You have to blacklist those that don't.
The Supreme Court has created a blacklist for so-called bad citizens, those whose ratings have dropped to 0. On it are companies, but also 23 million people to date. Among them is this journalist Liu Hu. He got a little too close to uncovering corruption among high-profile party members. After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. He only realized when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from traveling.
That tells me I'm still on the blacklist.
Punished because he's been branded untrustworthy by the state.
Once you're blacklisted, you can no longer get a bank loan, start a business, buy an apartment, or even send your children to a private school.
Liu Hu is among a tiny minority of people who have dared to criticize the system, which some are calling a digital dictatorship.
I worry, because I think many people like me will be deprived of individual freedom.
Britain's biggest police force is more than doubling its use of live facial recognition. So how does the technology work, and when will the Met Police be using it? Live facial recognition is used in public spaces and at large events to help officers track down criminals. Vans like this, fitted with cameras, scan faces in real time, comparing the live footage against a watch list of offenders. Police on the ground then move in to make an arrest. The Met Police say live facial recognition will now be used up to 10 times per week over 5 days, up from the current 4 times a week across 2 days. Privacy campaigners have called the expansion incredibly concerning, with the Liberty's campaigns officer urging the government to regulate the technology to protect people's rights. But the Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, says it's only being used to look for serious criminals, like registered offenders.
Every right that you have is transformed into a privilege contingent upon your obedience to arbitrary government dictates. It will make you a slave. And what do we do about this? What do? We resist.
And right now, people are resisting. In the UK, more than 1.6 million people have signed a petition opposing the plan for digital ID cards. And don't forget that digital IDs is the gateway to digital wallets and CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. All of this is the World Economic Plan for Agenda 2030. So, how do you feel about digital IDs being rolled out in the UK and around the world? Will you comply or will you resist?
June 2019, the UN proposed the Agenda 2030. It was heavily influenced by the World Economic Forum. It was agreed upon by every nation in the world, but a big part of it is surveillance. Red flag, I would say. So under Agenda 2030, many goals like renewable energy, smart cities, and digital ID were implemented. This one freaked me out. The World Economic Forum, they're the biggest advocates for global digital identity infrastructure. So basically, everyone will have a biometric ID attached to them now.
Wow.
So wherever you travel in the world, biometrically, you can be identified. This is all in the hopes of making the world a better place. And part of the Agenda 2030 that World Economic Forum were involved in, it's called the Great Reset.
Right, which we've heard of.
World Economic Forum launched the Great Reset Initiative, and their catchphrase for this whole Great Reset was, "You will own nothing and be happy."
Yes, this officially is happening.
It's been implemented.
Digital ID will make our interactions with each other and with the state faster, cheaper, and more reliable. Will allow us to judge who has a right to be in our country and who doesn't, and so solves one of the major challenges of immigration.
I cannot believe this dweeb is still kicking about. It's clearly not about immigration, is it? And then again, immigration wasn't the problem. It was illegal migration. All you had to do to fix that was see if you've got a passport or a visa. If you don't, deport. The whole public knew about the digital ID before all this shit came out. We already knew what was coming. Create a problem, plug a solution, clearly an agenda behind it. Please watch the next clip because this is what's coming next.
The State Bank of Vietnam, SBV, just closed 43% of all bank accounts in Vietnam because they hadn't complied with biometric authentication, in other words, digital IDs.
If you're one of the people that really doesn't even see anything, or it doesn't affect me, not in my backyard, and you don't see anything about it, then you're an idiot. This will affect everyone in the country. Okay, your life will be ruined if you don't get this digital ID. The less power these people have, the smaller the government, the better. Look at history, please. These people are just straight up liars. You cannot believe anything they're saying.
So Starmer confirms a huge change is coming for every bank user in the UK. From October 1st, 2025, any transfer over £800 between individuals will no longer happen instantly. Instead, your money will be frozen for 24 hours. Yes, even if you're sending funds to family or close friends, it will be held back by the bank. During that 24-hour delay, a powerful monitoring system built by banks and HMRC will scan your transfer using advanced AI. It will check the source of your money, who it's going to, and why you're sending it. Officials insist this is about protecting people from scams and hidden transactions. But here's the catch. If anything looks unusual, your bank can demand proof like invoices, contracts, or receipts. Fail to respond in time, and the transfer could be cancelled with details reported to tax authorities. And it doesn't stop there. Experts warn this could create serious delays for people who rely on quick money transfers in emergencies.
So we're in Barclays Bank in Harlow. My mum ordered some cash yesterday that she wanted to pick up out of her own account, her own money, and they won't give it to her. So they want to know what it's exactly for. And my mum says it's for personal stuff. I don't need to tell you what it's for. It's my money. So they've ended up calling the police to come and ask her questions about what it's for, so she's not being fraudulent, even though she's stated that she's not being made to be taking the money out of her account. So yeah, everyone, Harlow, Bartridge, ridiculous. The police are coming to ask her questions about it. What's the point in putting your money in a fucking bank? You can't fucking draw it out. It's disgusting. Upset her. I'm fuming.
Anybody that submits to this, anybody that accepts a digital ID is slapping handcuffs around their own wrists. It's the end of freedom, it's the end of choice, it's the worst possible decision that any free-living, freedom-loving person could possibly make. But as I say, I was pessimistic about it for a while, I'm not anymore. We've got them on this. We have them surrounded. Their arguments don't stack up. None of the reasons that they've put forward for doing this make any kind of sense. The very idea that this is going to tackle the people arriving by boats on the shores of the British Isles is absolute nonsense. It was never supposed to do that. The appetite, the desire to bring forward the digital ID was there years ago. And it was understood by the people that wanted to bring it forward that the British people would not accept it. So problems had to be fomented to make people desperate to accept this as a solution. Hence the opening up of the borders and the mass immigration onto these shores that has stoked division, has stoked fear, and the hope has been that people would accept the digital ID as this solution to the problem. But it's entirely bogus. Yeah. All people have to do is not comply, and this thing falls flat on its face. And I am convinced that that is what's going to happen.
You really believe that those profiting from human will think, oh dear, I have to check your digital ID now. I can't carry on paying you £1.50 an hour to work in my sweatshop.
I'm absolutely convinced that amongst the reasons that people travel through France, which is a safe country, to come to the United Kingdom, amongst the reasons is because it's easier to work in our legal economy than it is in other countries, and we have to deal with that.
Bosses who are prepared to hire people illegally are not asking them for their national insurance card. So what's the evidence? What makes you think they're suddenly going to ask them for a digital ID?
We need to be really clear. You must have ID, mandatory digital ID, in order to work, because we have to stop illegal working. If you look at any of the raids, we've massively increased the number of raids on working premises. It is absolutely clear that people are working illegally in numbers.
But why do you think that them having
acceptable.
a digital ID, having to have a digital ID, would stop that problem, when right now people are meant to have a national insurance number and card, and if they're not asked for that, a boss is willing already to break the rules? What's the difference going to be?
You know what the shocking thing is these politicians must have such a low view of the general public that they can sit there, say nonsense, and expect everyone to believe it. The only one this harms is law-abiding citizens. It's an overreach by the government. It's an invasion of privacy. It's to monitor your every move. It is the pathway to a surveillance state. Everything you do is monitored. The government knows everything about you. And is that something people want?
The purchasing power of British workers has collapsed in the last year. Food prices are rising at almost 4 times the rate of wages. But while the cost of living crisis makes food, goods and services more expensive for everyone, you can walk down any British high street and find companies that are doing very well for themselves. Tesco's made £2.6 billion in adjusted operating profit in the last financial year. That's $1 billion more than they made in 2018. And their operating margin beat their records for the last 5 years. Starbucks' operating margin has risen to 19.1%. McDonald's profits per share rose by 16% last year, taking their operating margin to 45%. Krispy Kreme's first quarter profits are up 12% year on year. At Boots, profits tripled in the last financial year, and their CEO's pay more than doubled to £3.8 million. Here at HSBC, their net interest income has gone up by 38% compared to last year, earning them an extra $2.5 billion from the difference between more expensive loans and worse savings accounts. And it's not just that that's unfair, is it? It's not something that consumers in your constituency can look at and say, well, I don't like the prices that Tesco is charging, I'll go elsewhere.
No, because they're high everywhere else. Food inflation, nearly 20%. And if you look at actually what inflation is for necessities like bread and milk and wheat, beans, pasta, that's all much higher than 20%.
This is 400 tonnes of wheat, and it costs us £10 a tonne more to grow than we are currently receiving from the open market. This is your standard loaf of bread from whatever supermarket you choose to get it. 800 grams of loveliness. £1.38 in whichever store you decide to go and frequent. This is 11p. This 11p is what the farmer gets for the wheat. If that 11p was to go up and become 13 pence, then this would actually be worth doing, because as it stands at the moment, there's £4,000 as a loss right here. And we are not alone. That is farming across the UK. You are being told that the price of your food is going up because prices of cereals are rising. It's a lie. The supermarkets are lying to you, and the media cannot be bothered to look into it or scratch the surface. Welcome to 21st century Britain.
Millions of households across the UK have been scrimping, saving and simply not managing, with energy bills hitting record highs. But also soaring are the profits of our largest energy supplier, British Gas. Today's report from British Gas shows its profits soared from 98 million to 969 million in the first half of this year compared to last. But take a closer look at the company's interim report, and it reveals that British Gas has benefited from Ofgem raising the energy price cap for consumers to the tune of £750 million in 18 months. That's 75% of all profits in that time. Ofgem's energy price cap is designed to stop suppliers struggling with rising wholesale gas prices from going out of business. More than 30 have gone bust since 2021. British Gas, however, which has taken on 700,000 new customers, has never been at risk of collapse. In fact, it's posted more than £1 billion in profit over the last 18 months alone.
Winter is peak time for food banks, and with a number of people in need close to record highs, the One Can Trust is working hard to ensure no one misses out on meals. The cost of living crisis essentially comes from high housing, fuel and food costs. It's been going on for so long now that many are accumulating serious debt, and the only way to manage is with help. The Trussell Trust is a national anti-poverty charity. It handed out over 1.4 million emergency food parcels in the last 6 months.
Hunger in the UK is not a problem about access to food. It's very much an income problem. 86% of people seeking support from food banks in the Trussell community are on incomes so low that they're unable to afford to eat and stay warm and clean at the same time.
Campaigners say this level of food poverty can't continue.
And we need to see change. There are appalling levels of hunger and hardship in our communities right across the UK, and that's not something that we want to accept because we know change is possible.
And with Christmas coming, many depend on the kindness of others.
This was the logo before, gov.uk. This was the logo, perfectly good logo. But then they wanted it changed, no problem. They got a graphic designer to change it to this. That's what it changed it to. If you can see, it's the exact same. The dot has been moved slightly up and the background has changed, which you can do on Canva in about 10 seconds. My 7-year-old daughter, if I asked my 7-year-old daughter to change the logo and she did that, I'd go, oh, bless her. Bless her. Maybe she's not cut out to be a graphic designer. She's 7. The government paid over £500,000 for this change. You know what's interesting? Does that not just show you they're couldn't give a monkeys on how they spend our money? So the average person, spends about 15 grand a year? The average employee? £15,000 a year on taxes. That's how much you pay. Because if you're making about 35 grand, you're going to pay about 15 grand. That means that you would have to work basically your entire working life just to pay for the logo.
The number of people claiming out-of-work benefits has hit a total of 6.5 million. The government has just quietly updated its welfare database. No headlines, no fanfare, but the numbers are shocking. Officially, unemployment is just 1.7 million. But when you widen that to sickness and hidden unemployment, it hits 6.5 million, the highest ever. In many of our great cities, it's hit astonishing levels. In Liverpool, it's 23%. In Birmingham, 25%. In Blackpool, 27%. Once, we called this a Great Depression when unemployment hits these levels, but today, it's the new normal. A record 235,000 young people under the age of 25 are now claiming long-term sickness benefits. And once you're on, statistically, most never return to work. I've spoken to benefits assessors who say the hardest part of their job is signing young people off on these long-term sickness benefits. A quick phone call, a quick approval, and for the most, that's it. They might never hear from anyone in officialdom again. Zoom out further and we can see working people also claiming disability and sickness benefits. In total, 11% of our entire working age population is claiming one of these benefits. The cost is spiraling.